The objective of this briefing is to help you get the very most out of your time at Salisbury Plain training area and come out the other side in one piece. Let's start with sources of information. Firstly, there's the Standing Orders for Training, or SOFT, which also contains details you'll need to access the military intranet website that has up-to-date information, and the aid memoir which all personnel must carry whilst on the plane. Also, make sure you have the current training areas maps, as they do periodically change. Let's take a closer look at the main features of Salisbury Plain. The military training areas are highlighted. Here is the main public road system that runs through it. There's also a network of stone tracks within the training areas for you to use. Public access is allowed in the blue areas and the marked routes all the time, but access is controlled or prohibited in the red areas. These are the small arms range danger areas at Warminster and Bulford. The main impact areas 15 and 16 are out of bounds at all times, unless allocated by the Training Safety Authority. Areas 1 to 4 are occasionally used for live firing exercises, and details about this are announced in advance, and red flags are flown when in use. It's also essential that all units visit the Defence Training Estates HQ, and that thorough recce's are carried out of the training areas you are going to use. Remember, all commanders must receive the mandatory SPTA briefing every 18 months given by SO2 training, which will bring you up to speed on any changes since the last time your unit was here. Right, this is the most important thing I have to tell you. Your safety, the safety of your comrades, and the safety of the general public comes first. No training exercise can ever justify putting people's lives at risk. So no matter how intense the exercise gets, or how much pressure you are under, don't take risks with people's lives, especially your own. Remember, we train for war. We're not at war on the plane. Here are a few examples of serious accidents that have happened on Salisbury Plain. I'm afraid every year people get hurt, and in the past, some have even been killed on military exercises. So if in doubt, stop and think again. The Training Safety Authority is your passport to operate on the plane, whether live or dry. It is produced daily and is subject to amendments. So phone range ops or visit the Unit Information Centre to check that nothing has changed since it was issued. It tells you who is training, where, when, and with what. Very rarely will you have exclusive use of a training area. Therefore, it is essential to deconflict your exercise plans with other users at the monthly allocations conference. So always carry your aid memoir and read it. It's got a map showing the key facilities and a list of the main rules you must comply with, a flowchart telling you what to do if there is an incident, and a guide to the special signs you'll find on the plane. Okay, let's take a look at some of the special training facilities on the plane. First of all, there are the drop zones and landing strip. There are 4 standard DZs: Imber, Fox Covert, Black Bull Firs and Everley, and the landing strip at Deptford Down. You may be allocated an area which contains a DZ, but you must ensure that you stay out of the DZ when it's active, which will be shown on your TSA, or you may have objects from the sky dropping on your heads. Troops must not dig or use any vehicle on the Deptford Down landing strip, because this would threaten aircraft safety. Heavy lift aircraft cannot avoid holes or vehicles when landing or taking off. It's your responsibility to ensure they don't have to. Okay, that brings us on to the major cause of injuries and death on the training area: vehicles. Virtually all serious injuries and deaths that happen on Salisbury Plain are caused by vehicles being driven too fast or in an inappropriate manner for the terrain and weather conditions. The maximum speed on all roads and stone tracks in the training area is 30 miles per hour. However, weather and surface conditions may mean that you will have to reduce your speed accordingly. MOD police and training area staff constantly monitor vehicle movement to ensure safe training. Anyone training in a dangerous manner, including speeding, who is judged to be a danger to themselves or others, will be removed from the training area and placed in the sin bin at Westdown Camp. They can only be released by their exercise director, who will no doubt be pleased to see you. Wheeled vehicles must give way to tracked vehicles at all times on made-up tracks. Wear and tear from vehicles is a major cause of environmental damage, so in order to minimize this, use stone tracks whenever possible. That means avoiding parallel tracking. So when there is a made-up track or road available, it should always be used when your unit is non-tactical. You can also help reduce damage to the track edges by crossing them at a right angle. The next biggest killer after speed is off-road driving. Firstly, you must be qualified to drive your vehicle cross-country. There is a lot of steep terrain, unmarked ditches and excavations throughout the area. You need to be particularly aware of the defensive positions in Area 2 and old target trenches at Blackball Firs. Every year this takes its toll on military vehicles. Areas where vehicles are prohibited are marked by white top posts that are placed around out-of-bounds areas like archaeological sites and to highlight hidden hazards like ditches and culverts on the edges of tracks and roads. Safe off-road driving is all about route selection. For example, this vehicle needs to get from here to here. Taking the most direct route is suicidal, but it is possible to find a safe route down the hill like this and arrive in one piece. To help you develop your cross-country driving skills, there's a dedicated cross-country driving area with a range of obstacles to train on, which can be separately booked. There are special rules which apply here too, so read them before you start. For blacked-out tactical driving at night, both the driver and vehicle's commander must have night vision, whilst normal lighting rules apply for non-tactical driving. There are numerous public roads and rights-of-way which cross the training area, and these are marked on the SPTA maps. Here are some of them. Once you have deployed on exercise, you should keep off the public roads wherever possible, especially when using tracked vehicles. Where wheeled vehicles have to travel on local roads, then obey the local road restrictions marked on the maps and signed on the ground. Be polite and give way to civilian traffic. These are the only crossing points to be used by any military vehicle to cross public roads. It's essential that units use these crossings correctly to prevent the risk of serious accidents, which have occurred in the past. Single or pairs of vehicles may cross without a crossing party, but you are still responsible for cleaning mud off the road. Convoys of 3 or more tracked or wheeled vehicles must deploy a crossing party, which consists of a crossing marshal and 2 sentries. Remember, all tank crossings are non-tactical. The correct crossing procedure is as follows. Firstly, all vehicles must activate all lights as they approach the crossing. The convoy then stops and deploys personnel to provide a crossing party. They put on high visibility vests. The crossing party now deploy onto the crossing. Traffic sentries move an appropriate distance away from the crossing to get a clear view of approaching road traffic in both directions. They identify a safe gap in the traffic and signal to the marshal when it's safe for the convoy to cross. The objective is not to stop the road traffic, as this is against the law and causes disruption to other road users. Once a safe gap has been identified, the vehicle driver or commander is then signaled to cross by the marshal. Once the vehicle is on the crossing, it's the job of the crossing party to alert them about any traffic that is approaching and to signal the road traffic to slow down. The worst case during a crossing is civilian traffic travelling at excessive speed being unable to stop in time. But whilst sentries should vigorously warn civilian drivers of the danger, remember that they should never step into the road to stop traffic. At night, the same crossing procedure must be carried out, making sure the vehicles are fully lit as they approach the crossing, and that the crossing party are equipped with torches to signal to the crossing marshal. Refer to Part 1 of your standing orders for more information on crossing procedures. Your unit is ultimately responsible for removing any mud from the public highway, so you should have already organised a sweeper to be ready to clean any mud off the road once the crossing is complete. If no sweeper is available, you will need brushes to clean the road. There are 3 military bridges across the River Avon that are connected by military roads to the tank crossings on either side of the valley. Both bridges and military roads can be closed to the public if required to allow training to be conducted safely. The SSSI status of the River Avon requires a pollution control boom to be deployed in the river by exercising units prior to any fording or bridging of the river to prevent an oil or fuel spillage being carried downstream. The boom is booked through the training office. Both bridge sites B and C can be used for engineer bridging and fording. You should clear this use through the training office. You should arrange for the gates to be unlocked, remove the dragon's teeth at the crossings and replace them when you've finished. The final point on driving relates to the Beryl Valley, which is a very sensitive conservation area and has a deep ditch along the bottom of it. Vehicles are not to cross it except at the demolition bridge sites 1 to 3 or at the foreseen gaps. In wet weather, when the ground becomes soft and muddy, sometimes it is necessary to restrict the use of tracked and wheeled vehicles in specific areas for safety and protection of the SSSI. When in force, these restrictions are published on the DTE website and shown in the Unit Information Centre. Fenced plantations may be entered on foot using the stiles where possible. Rides and vehicle bays have been cut in mature plantations for use by training vehicles. If you need to use foliage as camouflage, range operations will tell you where to find it. Right, let's take a look at some of the training issues. Pyrotechnics must not be used within 100 metres of a public highway, private property, members of the public or livestock. No 1.5 para-illume can be used within 1,000 metres of the River Avon when low-flying aircraft are operating in the area, or over Schedule 1 land. See Annex A of SOFT Part 1 for more details about this. BATSIM charges are limited to 0.25 kilograms and must not be used within 400 metres of a public right-of-way, unless special safety arrangements to deny public access are in place, or between 2300 to 0600 without range operations authority. Another important safety issue is unexploded shells and other munitions. Areas which allow public access are checked, but there's always a risk because military firing has gone on for over 100 years on the plain, so you could find an unexploded shell, mine or bomb that could still go off. So if you do find something, don't touch it, mark it and immediately notify range operations. When using civilian vehicles with personnel in civilian clothes carrying weapons, the MOD police must be informed so that they can warn the local police. All civilian white and grey fleet vehicles must be clearly marked as exercise vehicles. Mother Nature also provides some health risks. Animal ticks are common on the plain, and they can carry Lyme disease, which can infect humans and can be fatal, so keep your legs covered. If the tick bite displays a bullseye rash, seek medical attention immediately. The wild parsnip and hogweed can also cause rashes, so avoid coming into contact with these plants. Sunlight makes the plant juices react, so cover immediately and seek medical attention. If the worst does happen and there are casualties, Remember to use the flowchart in your aid memoir. Dial 999, giving the grid reference of the incident and nearest tank crossing or vedette post for the incident RV. Dispatch personnel to guide the ground-based emergency services from the RV to the incident location. Ensure you always inform range operations about the incident as soon as possible. Out-of-bounds areas are marked on your maps and have signs like these. There can be a number of reasons why an area has been designated out of bounds. It could be dangerous, or there could be fragile archaeology or environmental reasons to protect it. This is an archaeological site. It's clearly marked with signs and white-topped posts. In the past, some of these sites were severely damaged, like this one, by driving heavy vehicles over it. Today, digging or in any way disturbing the designated ancient sites which are fully protected is an offence, and the MOD is fully committed to protecting our entire historical heritage in the Salisbury Plain training area. So due to the UXO hazard, environmental sensitivities and archaeological restrictions, no digging is permitted on Salisbury Plain without obtaining clearance from SO2 training. As a guide, shell scrapes can be dug anywhere on the training area except in areas 15 and 16, the Warminster Range Danger Area and scheduled archaeological monuments. But you need to make sure that when digging, shell scrapes do not break into the chalk layer. Check SOFT for details on this. Units wishing to do any other digging must complete a digging request pro forma and have it signed off by range operations. No plant operator is to break ground without being in possession of this signed pro forma.
Okay, signed off archaeology and conservation.
Remember, there is always the potential to break unmarked underground cables and pipes. If this does happen, it must be reported immediately to range operations. When digging battle trenches, remember to de-turf, strip off the topsoil and keep it separate, and then remove the chalk layer. When backfilling, return the materials in the reverse order. Schedule 1 farmland is out of bounds to troops and vehicles at all times, unless authorised by range operations. It acts as a buffer zone to private land, and any damage means farmers have to be compensated. Some areas are signed for part of the year to protect nesting birds, like this stone curlew plot. Sheep and cattle are grazed in permanent pennings, which are out of bounds to vehicles, but can be entered on foot if empty. Digging is not permitted in permanent pennings. In addition, some 135 temporary electrical fence pennings are used across the training area, the locations of which are notified on the DTE-SP website. The electric fencing looks like this. It will give you a shock, but it's not lethal, so try and avoid contact. These pennings are out of bounds to vehicles and troops on foot. If electric fences are accidentally broken, then notify range ops immediately. Farmers are also granted consent to plough and plant crops in certain parts of the training area. Should it be tactically necessary, then these areas can be crossed on foot or in vehicles without the need to report damage. There are over 112 training features, most of which can be booked in advance. Some have been enhanced with force protection structures such as HESCO walls, sangars and chicanes to provide locations for training scenarios. Take care not to damage any of these structures. No pyrotechnics are allowed inside buildings, other than blank ammunition. No fires are permitted, and these areas and buildings must be left clean. If not booked out on the daily TSA, then they can be used on first-come, first-served basis. Some features are secured with locked gates, the keys for which can be obtained from the TAM or range warden if booked. Some buildings have asbestos materials, which are quite safe unless broken. Asbestos dust is a serious health hazard if inhaled, and troops should report broken asbestos and vacate the area. Hard standings are provided at strategic locations across the plain for use during after-action reviews, leaguers, replens, concentration areas and in wet weather. During dry weather, fires started by pyrotechnics and live ammunition are common. If a fire starts, you must suspend training activities in the immediate vicinity because priority must be given to putting out the fire before it gets out of control. Never enter the impact areas without range operations authority. Special rules apply during live firing. These are covered on SOFT Part 2. Fires must be reported to range ops. Note that in periods of high fire risk, a pyrotechnic ban may be enforced, which will be posted in the Unit Information Centre. With 58,000 acres of SSSI and 7 major underground water aquifers, pollution prevention and control measures are vital. You must ensure that your unit is carrying pollution control equipment on all vehicles and take precautions to prevent spills. All units must nominate a pollution control officer to coordinate the response to any spillages. Static running vehicles must use drip trays. All spills must be reported to range operations. A TAM will supervise the cleanup process. If a major spillage occurs, then the MOD emergency response contractor is only to be tasked through range operations. TAMs will deploy to supervise cleanup operations, and in event of a major spill, pollution control trailers capable of dealing with a 5,000 litre spill will be made available by HQ DTE Salisbury Plain. Due to the risk of a major pollution incident, combat support tankers and tactical air refuelling tankers are not permitted to drive off roads and stone tracks. Green latrines have been strategically placed at main training features across the plain and are marked on the 1 to 25,000 scale maps. Please don't place ammunition or rubbish in them. Toilet facilities can be augmented with portable latrines booked through Landmark Service Coordinator. All latrines are allocated on a 1 to 25 person basis. All user units must incorporate a cleanup phase into their exercises, during which rubbish and military debris is collected, trenches filled in and damage repaired. All rubbish is to be sorted, bagged and removed from the training area. It is not to be buried or put in latrines. Defence training estates cannot provide skips on the training area, so all rubbish must be taken to the military recycling facility at Westdown Camp in clear plastic bags. It's important to remember that the rubbish is then handed on to civilian operators for disposal, so it's vital that any live munitions or pyrotechnics are removed from the rubbish and retained by the unit. All expended ammunition, ammunition packaging and expended pyrotechnics must be separated before delivery to Westdown MRF. All other hazardous waste such as oil, lubricants, coolant, contaminated material, hexamine, all types of batteries, silooms and matches must also be separated from general waste and delivered to the MRF. With the best will in the world, a major military exercise is bound to result in some damage. But it is important to report all damage to training area infrastructure to speed up repair and reduce inconvenience to subsequent users. Use the damage report pro forma to notify range operations. Your unit should have a DAMCON party, which can repair minor damage and clean up military debris such as mine tape, defence stores and road wheel rubber. So, let's remind ourselves of the key points you need to remember. Only use areas allocated to your unit. Have a marked map. Obey the signs. Beware of difficult terrain, especially at night. Tank crossings are dangerous. It's essential that units use these crossings correctly. Keep within the speed limit. Clean up all mud on public roads. Remove military debris. Own up to mistakes. Salisbury Plain Defence Training Estates manages the Salisbury Plain training area in a safe and sustainable way, so that we preserve the history and environment of the plain for future generations and continue to provide first-rate military training now and in the future.